There was a time when mirrors weren't just practical. They were, you might say, decorative theatre. This mid-20th century Italian lacquered mirror captures that spirit perfectly. The soft green frame is dressed with raised gilt figures, pagodas and delicate floral details. A European dream of the Far East, created in Florence and exported across the world in the 1940s and 1950s. It's not ancient Oriental lacquer, but a Western interpretation. Romantic, stylised and made to bring a little exotic elegance into an ordinary sitting room. You can almost imagine it hanging in a hallway beside a telephone table, reflecting patterned wallpaper and polished parquet floors. It's a decorative statement piece from an era when homes were curated with care, and mirrors were chosen for charm, not minimalism. You'd be forgiven for thinking this decorative arch came out of a church, but it didn't. What you're looking at is a Gothic revival decorative wall panel made roughly between 1900 and the 1930s. The pointed arch copies medieval church windows. The crossbanding mimics leadwork and the pressed copper border gives it that aged ecclesiastical feel. But here's the important bit. It was never actually intended to be a window. Homes around the turn of the 20th century were obsessed with romantic medieval design. People wanted their parlours to look grand, old and important, even if the house was brand new. So, manufacturers produced decorative architectural pieces like this to hang on walls, above fireplaces or sometimes as over-mantel features. The copper sheet is stamped, not hand-embossed, and the crossbanding is decorative rather than structural, clear signs it was made to suggest history, not be part of it. So no, it's not church salvage and it's not medieval. It's early 20th century interior decor designed to make an ordinary home feel like a cathedral. And honestly, in my opinion, it kind of works. This next piece is a late Victorian to Edwardian pressed brass wall mirror, dating roughly from around 1890 to 1910. The frame isn't solid cast brass, it's thin brass sheet that's been machine pressed with scrollwork and floral detailing, then wrapped over a wooden carcass. That manufacturing method made ornate design affordable for ordinary people during the industrial boom of the late 19th and early 20th century. The oval crest at the top features a classical pastoral scene, used to project an illusion of culture and refinement into middle-class homes. You'll often find these hanging in entrance halls or above fireplaces, where they reflected light in what were traditionally dark interiors. What you're looking at here is a 19th century sporting print, a classic fox hunting scene that would have hung proudly in a Victorian country house or even maybe a tavern. It's a coloured engraving or lithographic print produced in quantity during the mid to late 1800s, when Britain was obsessed with country sport. Hunting wasn't just a pastime, it was a social statement. If you had one of these on your wall, you were signalling land, status and tradition.
Oh, that's interesting. Look, don't know if you can see this, but there's remnants of the old backing, which was a newspaper print.
Look at the composition. The mounted riders in their red coats, known as pinks, cutting through woodland. Hounds working the scent. Movement everywhere. These prints were designed to capture drama and hierarchy in one frame. The mounts and dark reeded frame suggest it's been reframed at some point, possibly late Victorian or even in the early 20th century. The staining, mellowing and toning to the paper is consistent with age, and in my opinion, it adds to the atmosphere, or patina. It's not rare museum material, but it's honest 19th century decorative art, reflecting Britain's sporting culture at its height. And in the right interior, especially with traditional or country styling, it would still work exactly as intended. What you're looking at here is a classic still life oil painting, very much in the tradition of 17th century Dutch and Flemish fruit studies. The dark, almost theatrical background, what artists call a chiaroscuro effect, apologies for my Brummie pronunciation, is designed to push the fruit forward into dramatic light. Grapes, peaches, raspberries, all painted with that slightly heightened richness that collectors love. This painting is all about abundance, texture and controlled realism. Now, this isn't 17th century in origin, but it's clearly inspired by it. Pieces like this were widely produced in the late 19th to early 20th century, when there was a revival of old master styles for middle-class interiors. It always seems to come back to middle-class interiors, doesn't it? The glassware, the decorative pedestal dish, and the carefully arranged composition all echo earlier Baroque examples. Provenance-wise, works like this typically come from continental Europe, often France, Italy or Belgium, where academic training kept those traditional, nostalgic techniques alive well into the 1900s. It's decorative, timeless and still highly displayable today. Whether Victorian revival or early 20th century academic school, it delivers exactly what a good still life should: depth, richness and a quiet sense of luxury. In a way, I wish I'd kept it, had it restored and properly framed, but unfortunately for me, that's now water under the bridge. This next item is a mid-20th century American oil on canvas signed by the artist Robert Cox. It's depicting a classic arrangement of roses, unusually placed in what appears to be a simple chamber pot, giving it that slightly rustic, tongue-in-cheek edge, if you pardon the expression. Robert Cox was born in 1934 in New Jersey and later worked in California, and is known primarily for his bright, decorative floral still lifes, often painted with confident, textured brushwork aimed squarely at the interiors market rather than the fine art elite. Stylistically, this painting follows the long European floral tradition: dark background, strong contrast and layered paint building light across the petals. It's not about hyperreal botanical study. It's about warmth, colour and impact. The blooms are soft, slightly impressionistic and are painted to glow against that muted backdrop. Pieces like this were made to decorate real homes, and that's exactly where most examples surface: estate collections and house clearance auctions rather than major gallery exhibitions. It's honest, decorative art from a recognised American studio painter of the 1970s and 80s. Attractive, accessible and still perfect for hanging in a traditional country interior. So this is interesting. What you're looking at here is not a medieval hand-painted icon. It's what's known, I think anyway, as an oleograph, or more accurately, a chromolithographic devotional print. That's easy for me to say. Mounted onto a wooden panel to imitate a traditional Orthodox icon. The metal hanging loop is likely a later addition, added for domestic display rather than church use. The image depicts the Madonna and Child in classic Eastern Christian style. You can see the elongated faces, solemn expressions and darkened background typical of Russian and Balkan iconography. But here's the key detail that defines this item. The surface isn't egg tempera on gesso. It's actually a printed image. In the late 19th and early 20th century, advances in colour lithography meant religious images could be mass-produced cheaply. Workshops all across Russia, Greece, Italy and the Balkans produced thousands of these devotional panels for ordinary homes. To make them look older and more authentic, the prints were often glued onto plaster-covered wooden boards, varnished heavily and sometimes even artificially crackled. Over time, real age has added to the artificial patina you see here. The red painted sides are a nod to traditional icon boards, but There's no recessed panel and no visible gold leaf halo, which you'd expect on a true antique hand-painted icon. So what is it really? Well, in my opinion, it's a late 19th to early 20th century devotional piece made to bring sacred imagery into everyday homes at an affordable price. Pieces like this generally sit in the range 1880 to 1930, so I think it does have some age. It's not museum grade by any stretch of the imagination, but it definitely has decorative, folk art and religious appeal. So if you're buying icons like this when you're outsourcing, always ask yourself, is it painted or is it printed? Because that single difference changes everything from provenance to value. This little survivor is a good example of an early 19th century dressing or toilet mirror, dating to the Regency period around 1810 to 1830. It's made from solid hardwood, most likely mahogany, with a warm, rich colour that only comes from age and repeated polishing over many generations. What immediately draws the eye is the condition of the glass. The speckled, cloudy appearance is known as foxing. This occurs when moisture and air penetrate the backing of early mercury-silvered glass, causing oxidation over time. Importantly, this is not damage in the modern sense. It is a natural and irreversible aging process and is actually actively sought out by some purist collectors who value fox glass because it confirms authenticity. In this respect, a mirror like this shouldn't look perfect. The foxing tells us the glass is original and has survived for more than 2 centuries without replacement. Crazy when you think about it. This mirror's rich mahogany frame is a testament to early 19th century craftsmanship and was carefully hand-selected for its deep, warm tone. Notice the subtle grain patterns, details that not only enhance its elegance but also speak to the durability and timeless appeal of Regency or Georgian era furniture. The mirror, with its turned brass finials, is designed to tilt to a desired angle and is held in place by its original side clamps. This practical feature was essential in Georgian and Regency bedrooms, allowing the user to adjust the angle for shaving, hairdressing, or personal grooming, long before fitted mirrors became common. Overall, this is a quietly elegant piece, functional, honest, and steeped in everyday Georgian life. Exactly the kind of object that bridges furniture, craftsmanship, and social history. Probably my favourite item so far from this tub. For our final item in this unboxing video, take a look at this time-worn 19th century oil painting of a Thames barge, quietly sailing under a glowing London sky. Even through the heavily aged varnish and surface wear, you can sense the atmosphere. That soft haze of sunset reflecting off the water and the dark silhouette of the sail rising against the moonlit sky. Thames barges were once the workhorses of London's river trade. From the 18th through to the early 20th century, they carried grain, coal, timber and other supplies up and down the River Thames in London and along to the English coast. Their distinctive red-brown sails and flat bottoms made them perfect for navigating shallow waters and tidal estuaries. In this painting, the unknown artist captures a quiet, almost poetic moment, the barge gliding calmly across shimmering water. Notice how the moonlight dances across the surface and how the distant shorelines fade into shadow. It's less about strict detail and more about mood, that peaceful, slightly mysterious feeling of being on the river at dusk. The worn, gilded frame and crackled varnish only add to its patina and character. They remind us that this piece has lived a life of its own, perhaps hanging in a seaside cottage or a London townhouse or tavern decades ago. It's not just a painting, it's a nostalgic window into Britain's maritime past and a tribute to the humble Thames barge that once powered our nation's trade.